Today's episode is sponsored by GrayMatter, dedicated to transforming operations and empowering people. Visit them at graymattersystems.com.
Aerospace and defense manufacturing.
Machines and automation.
Additive manufacturing.
Smart manufacturing.
The global manufacturing economy.
Welcome to Advanced Manufacturing Now, the podcast for manufacturing professionals, powered by SME. From the design screen to the shop floor to final assembly, we drive the conversation about making manufacturing smarter by connecting people who are passionate about manufacturing.
Hello, and welcome to Advanced Manufacturing Now, the podcast for manufacturing professionals. I'm your host, Amy Bryson, contributing lead editor of Smart Manufacturing magazine. Today, we'll discuss aligning digital transformation with cybersecurity, which is certainly a very relevant topic, both now and well into the future. And joining me is Todd Virden, GM of Advanced Analytics at GrayMatter. Now, GrayMatter is a leading industrial intelligence technology solution provider, and we'll learn a lot more about them and the great work that they're doing. But first, I want to thank you for joining us, Todd, and welcome you to the show.
Hi, Amy. Yeah, great. Thanks for having me. Really looking forward to the conversation today.
Wonderful. We are too. So I understand you have experience on both the end user side and now the solutions and consulting side of manufacturing. So before we jump into our topic, can you give our listeners a bit of background about you, as well as the work that you and your team at GrayMatter are doing?
Sure thing. So I am an electrical engineer by schooling. And when I got into school, I really thought that I wanted to be designing electrical systems for buildings. Like that was my dream job. And then came my first internship, started with General Electric in one of the light bulb manufacturing facilities outside of Cleveland, and immediately fell in love with automation. So I was at a facility that was maybe a little understaffed, so got to do a lot of things that interns probably shouldn't have been doing, like troubleshooting PLCs on the production line, deploying new PLCs, programming HMIs, vision systems, doing third shift technical support, kind of a little bit of everything. Spent a few years there, then moved and spent a couple years in the healthcare industry, still at General Electric, so making parts for x-ray machines, where I got to buy new equipment and then put it through the validation process. So about 2 years of mostly paperwork, and kind of took a step back and said, wow, I like to make improvements. I don't like to do paperwork. And at that time, I got to make a jump to GE Transportation, which was the locomotive division at the time of GE, to start a new factory. So moved over there and took the things that I had learned at the lighting facility, the automation background, the schooling that I had, and really set out to buy a lot of equipment to build this factory. And we did it with the idea of we want to collect data from the beginning. So that moved into writing purchase specs and data collection specification addendums to be able to say, when your equipment comes in, I want to be able to collect the data from it. So that was really like a 3-year startup kind of journey, which parlayed into me doing exactly that at the business level for the next 4 years. So that's how I met GrayMatter. So GrayMatter was really in my backyard and helped me go from just one plant in Grove City, Pennsylvania, to 13 facilities around the U.S., Mexico, and Brazil, as we were connecting assets that traditionally didn't need to be connected to the IT network because there was no need for a SCADA per se, but we wanted to have the information. So with GrayMatter's help, did that over a 4-year period. And then about 5 years ago now, I joined GrayMatter to be able to help our customer base put together that roadmap and the plan, and then also lead the execution.
So how would you define GrayMatter's approach to, industrial technology in general?
So we like to say that we are vendor agnostic, but with opinions. So we work with all of the major players, and what we really try hard to do is not say, you must use this software if you want to work with us, or you must do it this way, but really look at what's best for the customer, right? Do they already have an existing tech stack? I'm a firm believer in if you've got something, there's no point in ripping it out just because you don't like the way it looks or feels. Almost all of the platforms today can be molded and made to look exactly the same. So really like to look at what's your existing tech stack in place. And if you don't have anything, what's the best fit, right? What's easiest to maintain? What maybe do you have development capabilities for already? What has your team seen and worked with in the past? And I think that allows us to really, build trust with the customers and not just be, hey, we love this one thing, so you must use it if you want to work with us.
I think that's such an important point about being vendor agnostic, but with opinions that are rooted in experience, because a lot of our listeners are grappling with these, smart manufacturing journeys and digitizing their factories, and they're fearful that someone's going to, mandate that they rip out all of their systems. But more and more, we're seeing that it's about, democratizing, the processes and hearing from people like you about, how you can consult them on keeping what's working and making recommendations about what can work better. So that's an interesting point for our listeners.
Yeah. And the thing that I find really interesting is that if you look at the software landscape in the industrial market, I'll say today versus where we were 6 months ago versus 6 months before that, there's new players coming on the market all the time. Right? Like I honestly feel like every week we've got somebody new coming in, and sometimes those things stick around for a while, and other times they disappear in no time. Whether it be VC funding dries up or lead technician goes somewhere else. So I think being able to say, hey, look, we've tried and tested lots of different tools and help steer people towards maybe not the newest, shiniest object out there, but the ones that are providing value across the globe and in multiple different industries.
Yeah, I think there's so much conversation around the quote unquote cool aspects of technology, and a lot of people just want to know, the real solutions that are viable and valuable now that can help solve problems. So that's an important message. So can you talk to us a little bit about what verticals GrayMatter works with?
Yeah, can I just say all of them, Amy?
You can, but do you want to list them?
Yeah.
We can wait.
Absolutely. So, I'll say we've got a section of our business that focuses on water, wastewater. All around the country, we move water. That is not what my group, what we really care about. So, I focus on the manufacturing side. So we work with chemical manufacturers, life sciences, food and beverage, consumer packaged goods, cosmetics customers, aerospace. Probably if you've ever been on an airplane, our customers make parts that make those things fly across a variety. Med devices, and then I'll lump this is kind of where I came from, but small or large discrete manufacturing, right? Big widgets, little widgets, high speed, low speed. So, back to the beginning, really everybody. I'd say we do a lot in the CPG, food and bev, aerospace sectors, though.
Okay, great. And so from your perspective, what is your view of the spectrum of technology solutions that are out there? Like, they range from, control systems to artificial intelligence that are out there for manufacturing and other industries. And how do you help people navigate, that broad spectrum of technology solutions?
Yeah, good question, Amy. So within GrayMatter, we've got the capabilities of doing everything from drafting and panel design, panel build, PLC programming, SCADA, MES, integration to ERPs, up into cloud, and then machine learning. So we've got people that kind of know and understand every one of those. And we very intentionally don't have everybody know everything. We really try to focus with some people in different segments so that they can be truly experts. So, as I mentioned, with being vendor agnostic, but with opinions, what we see is that there's some really great tools, especially if I lean towards the AI side of things, machine learning. There's some really great tools out there that are awesome for if you want to say, how can I optimize my energy consumption in my house, that I would never, ever, ever dream of recommending to a manufacturer that wants to monitor energy in their facility, right? They're not built with the same purpose. They're not always up when they need to be up. They don't have the industry domain expertise in the background. So when we're looking at new software partners, new vendors to work with, we're looking for do the people behind the product actually understand the manufacturing landscape, and do they understand what it takes to be a manufacturer? Have they lived there? Do they one of the guys on my team says, do they have shiny shoes, right? Or do they have work boots with chinks in them? Have they been on a factory floor? Because I think, especially in the machine learning world, it's pretty important to understand the use cases that go into building the machine learning models and not just say, oh, give me your data and I'll run some machine learning. If I think about Azure, AWS, there's tons of tools that can do those things, but it's really how do you spin the technology to be able to adapt to the use case and say, hey, this is not just how I optimize your point of sale solution at a convenience store, but it's about optimizing energy consumption on a CNC or a rolling mill or something like that with all the contextual data behind that.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into some cybersecurity topics. So, people hear a lot about OT cybersecurity. So can you give us, the high-level overview of what really is OT cybersecurity and how does it fit in with strategies that you build for companies taking on a digital transformation project? I mean, this is really top of mind for a lot of our listeners.
Yeah, so I find this conversation really interesting, and what I like to say with my fellow practice director on the OT cybersecurity side is we're really better together. So we encounter lots of folks that either want to start with a cyber strategy or start with a digital transformation strategy. And I like to say they're really one. They need to be one. We need to think about them as the same thing. When I think about IT cyber, we're worried about email and phishing and phone hacks and all the Kevin Mitnick kind of stuff. On the OT side for cybersecurity, it's really about moving the data around in a safe and secure fashion and protecting the assets that make the money, right? Like if your email goes down, it kind of hurts, but if your PLC goes down from a cyber attack or because a nation state is changing a set point and making bad product that you didn't realize, that's a really, really bad thing. So we like to build a strategy around resiliency and defense in depth to be able to protect your assets multiple different ways while still making the data available to make decisions on. If Scott were on with us right now, he'd say the best cybersecurity plan is to take your servers and encase them in concrete and drop them to the bottom of the ocean. And I'm like, yeah, but I need to get that data out of the concrete and onto a 95-inch monitor above the factory floor. So it's about finding the happy medium where we can protect the data, we can transport it, we can cloak it, we can make it secure with encryption, and then we can unencrypt it on the other side and present it to those who have been authorized to use it so that they can get the value out of it. Because if we're not getting value out of the data, there was no point in collecting it ever to begin with.
Yeah. And why is it so essential to make cybersecurity part of the strategy from the beginning versus how people look at it now as an after the fact expense, almost like a line item expense?
Yeah, I think the number one thing would be like the 10-10-10 rule. It's 10 times more expensive once you're already in production and even 10 times more expensive than that if you've already had an event. So by planning it from the beginning, we can think about the different threat vectors, what is going to be introduced as you start connecting assets, and ways to mitigate that risk from the very beginning. I'm working with one client right now who has no data collection at all, and we're talking about, why a managed switch versus an unmanaged. And lots of people are like, well, unmanaged is easy. Everybody knows how to support those. But if you ask me to go sniff the traffic on a network with an unmanaged switch, I'm never going to see that traffic. So by having the conversation up front, even if it's an extra $20 or $30, we have so much more capabilities in the long run versus waiting until the end, somebody having an attack happen, and then saying, oh, wow, we need to go do something. Well, now those assets are deployed. That new stuff's deployed. You've got people using the data, and now you're ripping everything out of their hands and saying, hang on, got to wait. I've got to go fix these things. And you already bought it once. Now you got to buy it again. So what would have been maybe $20 or $30 more in the beginning, well, it's now the full cost plus that extra $20 or $30. So it's 120% more. And that's just kind of the, a low-level example of why it makes sense to think about it from the beginning.
And do you, from your experience in conversations, that you have. Do you think that small and mid-sized manufacturers underestimate the value of making cybersecurity part of their core business strategy?
Unfortunately, I do. I think that a lot of the big guys are the ones that have been getting attacked, and the small to mediums have maybe never been a threat vector in the past. They've never been a target. Well, I think it's pretty evident recently that nobody's exempt from being a target. Like some of the things that we see in the news where entire nation states are attacking hardware made by another nation state, no matter where it's at in the world, means that nobody's exempt anymore. Everybody is a potential target. It's really just a matter of when. And unfortunately, the more you talk about what you're doing, the bigger target you put on your own back.
Yeah, and I think a lot of small and medium-sized manufacturers also, to your point, think that they're not the targets, but a lot of those bad actors see them as lower-hanging fruit because they don't necessarily prioritize cybersecurity, proactive cybersecurity strategies. So we're seeing research to support that. And also, I think there's misperception around the cost effectiveness of investing in cybersecurity, especially when you do it from the start. So let's talk about how you typically get started with a customer on a solution. Walk us through what that process looks like.
Sure. So let's say net new customer to GrayMatter, somebody that we've never worked with. We would work on a series of functional requirements, really. And some people would come to us with an RFI and say, hey, we want you to do X. We would review those requirements and then usually offer lots of opinions and thoughts on, well, have you considered Y, Z, 1, 2, 3, and then talk about how we consider our core four, right? Automation and controls, brilliant operations, cybersecurity, and advanced analytics, and turn that into some sort of an assessment or a roadmap process, right? Not just where the customer thinks they want to be today, because that's all well and good, but also where do they want to be longer term? How does that cybersecurity fit in with their digital transformation strategy? How does automation and control, or maybe upgrading legacy control hardware, fit in with getting to the cloud and AI machine learning type things? And really putting that roadmap together of T0 today to T 5 years from now, and what bite-sized chunks can we take to get there while providing incremental value?
And do you have any examples of maybe some of the client solutions you've worked on?
Yeah, so without disclosing too much, I think one great example is a bakery company that a couple years ago when we met them, everything was paper-based. Lots of high-tech capabilities within the factories, but all information was trapped on paper and in bankers' boxes. So we started with a roadmap and said, here's what I would do in years 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then moved to a pilot. And actually what's interesting is with that roadmap, we really both collectively viewed it as foundational to moving forward and tried hard not to tie an ROI to the first step. And said this first step is really going to unlock the information that'll be used to fund future projects, which I thought was a great way to approach it, because I find all too often that people want to do a POC or a POV and then it's got to pay back in 6 months or they can't move forward. And especially for the small to mid-sized folks, like, you got to start somewhere. And likely the ROI won't be big at the beginning. So anyways, by deploying a solution for them that took control system data and brought it up into the MES layers and then moved it along to their ERP and WMS, we also did some cybersecurity assessments to think through things like patching, version management, hardware obsolescence, and then the cloaking, protection, encryption of data in transit to get it moved around their network and out to cloud-based providers. So that's just one example of working together where things started off more digital transformation-esque and turned up into, no, we've really got a holistic roadmap. Another example would be a biofuel customer that has remote sites all over the country and was looking to get better visibility into how the sites were performing while standardizing on an approach to implementation to be able to stand up new sites faster. So again, it's really digital transformation plus cybersecurity, because I can move data in all kinds of ways, but if it's not moved securely, then it's probably no good because it will be a threat vector that nobody likes. So put together the plan to be able to say, how do we go fast? Standard set of hardware, standard set of software, set of templates to say, wash, rinse, repeat from one site to another. Even when the process isn't exactly the same, it's the go slower up front to go way faster in the growth stage.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So we've covered a good bit of ground today, Todd. If one of our listeners if you gave them a go-do or a homework assignment, if they're thinking about, deploying a cybersecurity strategy as part of a digital transformation project, what could they do? What would be a good action item for them?
Number one would be reach out to our website, GrayMatterSystems.com. There you can submit a request to get on the phone with either myself or Scott or one of our other industry experts. We can dig into your process, what you do today, how you do it today, and where you're trying to get to help you understand and to help us understand how do we find a common ground that makes sense for both parties.
Wonderful. And I know on that site you have a list of the events that you're going to be at, so make sure for our listeners, check those out. There are also some great use cases, so that you can glean some insights from. So Todd, I want to thank you so much for taking time to speak with me today and sharing your valuable insights with our audience. And I'd like to thank our listeners for tuning in, and make sure you stay up to date about what's happening in advanced and smart manufacturing, and hear more podcasts by visiting us at advancedmanufacturing.org. Take care, everybody.